嗨，你今天好吗？Welcome to Journey by Chinese. I'm your host and Chinese coach, I-Chiao. I share Chinese language knowledge and stories of people who are learning languages, especially Chinese. Today, we invite Jess. Ziqing. She is a French Canadian who describes herself as a sociologist, foodie, dancer, and traveler. She started learning Chinese out of love for her husband and her family in law, not only in the hope to communicate better with her in laws, but in the hope to show respect and dedication towards his family, who welcome her so warmly. Let's let Jess say hi to everyone.
Hi everybody.
你好，子晴. What's your Chinese language learning journey?
Yeah, I think from the start, when I knew that he was Taiwanese, as a sociologist, I don't know, I think I find it's very important to understand someone's culture, and I think language is part of that. So, straight from the beginning, I remember when the first time I met his mom, I tried to write like 谢谢, and I wrote it in simplified because I didn't realize there was a different character
Yeah.
system in Taiwan. Um, and then, like I think I just slowly accustomed myself to the language and the culture. Um, and then, I even like checked like the numbers. I remember there was like numbers related to like good fortune and bad fortune when I gifted her
Right.
gift the first time I met her. But I didn't start learning seriously. Well, I did a pinyin class once I immigrated to United States because I'm Canadian and my husband, family, and himself lives in California. So I took a pinyin class. And then during the pandemic, just so happened I took a sabbatical. We were supposed to go to Taiwan, where I was supposed to go learn better the culture and learn the language. And then, of course, we didn't go. So I started to kind of study more intensively the language. Uh, and this is where I am now.
That's cool because I saw you share lots of like how you learn Chinese language on your Instagram social media. Jess learns Chinese. So you share lots of useful information to people. So why brings you like to start using this social media to share this?
I think at first, so I've never used Instagram before this. I had an Instagram, but I don't know, my generation, they just post the same picture they post on Facebook.
Yeah.
So I never found it very useful until I was like, oh, I think some of my friends, they have secret accounts where they keep themselves accountable to their own goals because we're dancers. So they just keep a record and archive. So at first, I started just as an accountability for myself, just to document my own learning journey because I think it would have been interesting maybe to hear how I sounded at the beginning with my speaking or how my writing was really
Yeah.
bad. And then at one point, I just got to know that there is a studygram community, which is
Mm.
just students across the world who are sharing pictures of their study journey, whether you're in med school or you're studying language. And I met amazing, amazing, supportive women on this platform where we're just all in this together and we're
Yeah.
sharing our, what we find interesting. And I think for me, mm, because I kind of learned by myself, and also I think I find a lot of joy in the curiosity in how I like to learn. So I like to play a little bit with the different tools and what sticks for me. And I just thought that maybe there are learners like me out there that could maybe be inspired to also find what works for them. So that's why I started to share a little bit more of that. I'm glad you say it's helpful. I
It
don't know if it
is.
is. Just thought more ideas in the world is better.
Like you guys should definitely check her Instagram account. She put like all her resources in different files. Like we will talk about more after that. But yeah, so as a sociologist, Like, what do you especially like about learning Chinese history and culture?
Yes, I think, coming from Quebec, Canada, having been raised as in the Western world, I
Mhm.
was always, and I was very interested in history. I
Yeah.
always loved it, and then I took all the classes I took during my personal academic journey, whether it was
Yeah.
in primary school, high school, all the additional classes I could take. We're very Eurocentric in the way that we learned this content.
Yeah.
So when I started dating Sean, my husband,
Yeah.
I realized that there was a lot that I didn't know. And
Mm-hmm.
there's so many tragedies and colonization of its own in this part of the world that I didn't understand.
Uh-huh.
So I remember one of the first thing I did was to buy a Taiwan history book, and it was really
Oh,
dense. There's not that many books written in English, actually,
yeah.
and they're a little bit academic and dense in content. I was like, whoa, wait a second. All of these words that I know and some that I don't know happened at the
Mhm.
same time. And why
Yeah.
do Japanese and Chinese don't like each other? And why is it with Koreans and so many things that shows up and are very important in today's world and in between people's like relationship and dynamics. But if I
Mhm.
wouldn't know the background history, I wouldn't understand why people have prejudices with each other. So
Mhm.
I think for me, learning history, uh, it's a tool for me to understand better the people of today's and the culture. Also, I think Chinese people really pay attention to how the culture survives through the ages, and there's so many things that are important, whether it's the painting, the poems, like the same thing you would ask a French person, and they would be so proud of their literature. So I think every culture has a lot of things that they are proud of that feel like it represents their essence as a
Mhm.
society. And I think this is why I'm so interested in it.
Yeah. And then I also agree with you when we know more about the history, why we interacting today, it would also help you to memorize how to interact it. Otherwise, you would just, oh, like, okay, this is the way like we use these phrases when I want to ask how are you? Or like, oh, sometimes we use, oh, 你吃饭了吗? But
Hmm.
actually we are asking how are you,
Yeah.
so it's like the meaning or the culture behind this language is so meaningful, and then it definitely helps you to learn this language, right?
Yes.
Cool. And then so are you a self-learner in the Chinese language, or are you taking the classes? What are some sources like you think is really helpful for you?
I see myself as both. I came across a blog post a long time ago during the pandemic, though, so it feels like it's a long time.
Yeah.
Um, and the blog post was saying how we're our own teachers, and I think it resonated with me a lot, coming from academia and having always subscribed to a very rigid way of studying and bring insights. I think for me, learning Chinese gave me the opportunity to discover how I learned in a new ways. And it's not, for me, HSK's exams are not important in my learning journey. So it gave me the opportunity to discover without studying for an exam, which I used to do all the time, or like how to make sure that my information was, relevant in the context of acquiring a diploma. So
Mhm.
now I think I take classes. I took opinion classes, group classes at first, and then now I'm online and I do mainly one-on-ones.
Mhm.
And but I see my classes as a partnership into my own journey into how I want to kind of learn, because I think while like classes are not enough for you to
Yeah.
learn the language, there's a lot of work you have to do outside of it, and how proactive you are and how curious you are about not only the content that you're learning but also the way that you are learning is as important as the time you spent in class.
Yeah, and I also saw you have lots of posts and then also a blog about using the drama as one of your sources, right? Can you describe a little bit about that?
Yeah, yeah, you were asking what are the resources that are really helpful. I think so dramas are really important for me. I started by the beginning. I think maybe it's also because I have a background in music, so sounds
Mm.
um, are important
Yeah,
around me in my
yeah.
life. And
Uh-huh.
this is also how I learned English. My English was really bad before, but I
Uh-huh.
know everybody always mentions the example of Friends. For
Uh-huh.
me, my generation, it was Harry Potter. Like I learned English through Harry Potter
Yeah,
movies.
yeah.
So the same thing with Chinese, I think for me was the passive input. You just put it on, and then whatever happens, you just go through it and you listen. And I think uh, even if people think that they don't hear tones,
Yeah.
I think you will. I think it's a melody, it's a music, and
Mm.
I think it's what has been really helpful. I think for me to, without noticing, having maybe a more uh, maybe a more native pacing
Yeah. Uh-huh.
slowly, and
Uh-huh.
then also maybe paying more attention without noticing of the tones. And now I'm using it. At the beginning, you like having the opinion. So there is resources out there like the language with Netflix. You can have pinyin, you can have English, and you can have characters all into one
Yeah.
and of subtitles, which was really helpful.
Mm.
But along the time, along you challenging yourself, then now I'm actually using it as not only a listening practice, but a reading practice. Why? Because sometimes I feel the dialogues and the content in the textbooks or the things that are offered for beginners or intermediate are not that engaging for me.
Yeah.
It's
Hmm.
often very focused on vocabulary, which at this point for me, I feel like I have a foundational
Yeah.
vocab and I just want to be comfortable in the space I am in.
Mm.
And so I want to familiarize myself with sentence structures, the way you express yourself that is more natural, and not only reading a thing that is repetitive in terms of grammar like points, but always brings new vocab. So I think dramas for that brings you a lot of diversity and it's always very engaging.
Yeah. Yeah, and then especially, I love your perspective of like using a drama and then as a one of a great resources, like immerse in the listening, and then also real conversation, like in between two people's like not just not just like one-on-one a shared paragraph, but like multi terms of the paragraph of the interaction. And then when you are watching the drama, one thing amazing is like you could see their reaction, like their behaviors in the drama. So it would also assist you. Sometimes I think language is not just only language it itself, it also included your body movement to show that like if you do that, which means like you're more confident or do that. But if like, yeah. So I think it's amazing to as one of a great resource and also keep your interest like in learning this language, right?
In that sense, I think now because I think reality TV shows are more difficult to
Ah,
access for
yeah.
beginners, but now I discovered reality TV shows, and to your point, I'm learning so much in terms of reaction. And for
Mm.
me, it's not only the nonverbal and the reaction, but the humor,
Yeah.
sense of humor of how it is like in Chinese
Uh-huh.
in Chinese language, how does it show up? It's
Uh-huh.
wonderful, because I think it's something that in a drama,
Mm.
it's scripted. So
Mm.
it's not the same. The humor will show, but it's not going to be as the same ease of expression of
Yeah.
humor. So I think this is something that made me feel actually closer to the Chinese people in a way, because
Mm.
it's so personal, right? Versus a scripted TV show where it's more like a story that is told.
Mm, cool. So I love you also mentioned you are your own teacher. So you
Mm.
are your own teacher on this journey. And so what would you do when there's times you feel very frustrated about learning a language or you encounter some learning slumps or barriers, what would you do at that time?
Mm. I think for me, Um, it definitely happened a couple of times, mostly when I have a headache and I've studied too many hours and I'm trying to understand this grammar structure that
Yeah.
makes no sense because French is so rigid and Chinese is so flexible with the context and so malleable. You can even create new words, like this is not something that is possible in French.
Yeah.
Um, so when I think I'm frustrated or exhausted, I'm just gonna drop everything
Mm,
in the sense that I'm not gonna push myself too hard to the point that I'm gonna start having bitterness or resentment towards me studying Chinese because I love it and I'm doing it for love as well, right?
yeah.
I don't want this to taint my passion and my interest. So usually what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna connect to what I love. So what I love, well, we've talked about the fact that I love TV shows, but there are TV shows sometimes that are not as relevant to my study. For example, all the historical drama, the wuxia, all of these like dramas that have very specific vocabulary that or very old ways of speaking
Mm,
that while I'm interested in them, don't get me wrong,
yeah.
it's not at my level or at this point. So I think I'm just so I watch these, I'm gonna put one and then I'm just gonna not bother into studying. I think it's very
Mm,
important to self-care. As a teacher, it doesn't mean that you need to be on all the time.
yeah.
You also have to respect your own pace and when you're tired. So I think you have to reward yourself. So these are kind of moments of reward where it's like, oh, if it's not working, it doesn't mean there's something wrong with me. That's nothing there's wrong with the language or what I'm doing or my teacher or this textbooks. It just means I'm tired. So
Yeah.
I'll take a break. I watch something that is not necessarily relevant. I'm not, of course, there's always something I learned, even if I'm watching for entertainment, but I think it's something that I do a lot. Or sometimes for me, it's also reconnecting to learning something new. I think learning something new always do something well to your brain. It like makes you excited again.
Yeah.
Whether it's gonna be about food, like I'm gonna try a new Chinese food recipe to do for my husband, or I love music. I discovered Guqing and Guzhang, and so I'm just gonna put that type of music. And I'm as a dancer too, so sometimes I just lower the lights and just dance the way my body wants to move on this music because it makes me feel connected to
Mm,
myself and my journey. So I think I would just tell people like find something that is a safe thing to do to bring you happiness. Like some people in their own life they have that. It's a piece of chocolate, it's a
mhm,
coffee because you love coffee. Like
mhm.
we all have these
Yeah.
self-soothing or rewarding things. So I think I would just say, hey, just go back to that a little bit and see how it changes things.
Mm, reward yourself a little bit, try something different, would bring your joy back, like care your mental health first. And I think like this lots of Chinese language learners like need to hear that because there's an amount of the people they are preparing for like HSK or talk for a test. But when you're preparing a task, like it's easily you're feel stuck or like feel very tired about this language. So it's important to bring yourself back, like calm down yourself or like just watch something for fun. It would be
Yeah,
good. Yeah.
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 And even to that point, right? I remember I did the HSK intensive class at the beginning of the pandemic, and I remember feeling like, oh, I need to study, I need to succeed. And I think once you put all of these rigid way of studying, like the HSK exam is really rigid. There's like very objective
Mm-hmm.
that you have to fulfill, and there's way to study for it that are smarter than others. Um, but I would say that if you just watch a TV show,
Yeah.
you will also like these like HSK2, HSK3, I would even say HSK4, all
Mm.
these grammars are in TV shows. I guarantee you
Mm.
they are.
Mm.
Even though you feel like you're not studying as hard, and yes, they are spreaded all over the place,
Yeah.
but you can still you're not losing your time. That's what I'm trying to say. You're
Yeah.
not losing your time. I deeply believe that you're gonna get something out of it, you know.
Mm. And I also saw on your post, like you would like when you're watching some dramas, and then sometimes you would stop it and then just write it down, right? Write it down and also practice in a different way. So not limiting yourself to like one resources or just preparing a task, but like, always remind yourself to enjoy in this language.
Yeah, have fun. Yeah, like I said,
Yeah.
I don't write them anymore. What I do is I actually take screenshots or
Ah,
I take a video clip. And I
uh-huh.
even take sometimes video clip within my computer of a whole conversation that I'm going to practice and mimic later. Or, and then I have a glossary for words. I have a glossary for grammar. Like, for
Yeah.
example, ba. Like, it's not true that you can understand ba with only the four example that your SSK textbook gives you.
Yeah.
You know, you have to, but then ba is so specific. You don't use it all the time. So it's difficult over time to understand it so well because it's not like 是什么什么的. Like it,
Uh-huh.
because this one we use it a little bit more often. So
Yeah.
it's a little easier to get accustomed to it than I think ba or bei. So if you pay attention to these and you just like you read the subtitles, you just wait for ba to have here, and then you're like, oh, okay, you stop everything, take a
Yeah.
screenshot. You can
Yeah.
write it down, take your phone, whatever it feels
Yeah.
right for you, and then take it as a way to study.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah, so like that's all for today. If you guys want to know more about what Jess is sharing, like, and she also like organized all her like learning sources in a great way, like putting in different files, like it's very organizing. So if you guys are interested, you could follow her on her Instagram social media. It's Jess Learns Chinese, JessLearns Chinese. And today, since I know you have a plan to going to Taiwan at some moment, so today our giveaway for every of you who are listening to this show is we have a giveaway which is 35 survival phrases for your Taiwan journey. So if you're interested, you think someone will be benefit, take two people in this post and then follow for both of us, and then we will send this giveaway for every of you. Okay. Thank you, Jess.
Oh, thank you so much. It was great talking to you.